We're used to thinking of the gods of Shurima as either majestic saviors or cursed Darkin. But have you ever considered that Azir, Nasus and Renekton were once on the verge of becoming monsters like Aatrox or Rast? They went through the same hell of the abyss, experienced the same betrayal and the fall of an empire. So why do some look like deities in golden armor today, while others look like mangled weapons seeking the end of the world? Today we will uncover the secret hidden in the sands. Why did the true heroes of Shurima not become Darkin? And are they really as holy as we think they are? Sit back because we're about to begin. Guided by the divine aspects of Tavern and preparing for some unknown future war, the ancient Shurimans used the sun disk at Narimazeth to create the first Ascended. After their failure at Narimazeth, the Shurimans built a larger sun disk in the capital of Shurima, likely with the help of the mages of Ixtal. After its construction, the Oasis of the Dawn appeared inside the structure. Its life-giving water flowed into the surrounding area, reviving the desert. Later, the Oasis formed the Mother of Life river system. In ancient times, the ascension ceremony was a ritual usually performed by sun priests, who were a clergy consisting of high-ranking individuals devoted to the almighty sun deity. A huge artifact known as the sun disk was used for this purpose. During the era of the sun disk, the priests decided which noble citizens had served their empire selflessly and gave them the opportunity to continue doing so even after their time of death would normally have come. Therefore, warriors of the ascended host were, if not numerous, at least much more common during this era. Two brothers, Nasus and Renekton, were among the first to be ascended. During their human lives before ascension, there were polar opposites, but it was this duo that became the symbol of Shurima's invincibility. Nasus, the older brother, was the embodiment of wisdom and strategic genius. He was called the curator of the sands. He didn't just study history, he created it, amassing the largest library in the empire. Renekton, on the other hand, was a force of destruction, a legendary warrior whose fury on the battlefield caused enemies to flee in terror. However, Nasus's fate was nearly cut short by tragedy. He was struck down by a terrible illness that ravaged his body faster than healers could understand its cause. On the brink of death, the Sun Priests delivered their verdict. Nasus was truly worthy of ascension. His contribution to the development of Shurima was so significant that the sun would grant him eternity. But Nasus was too weak to climb onto the platform under the scorching rays of the sun disk on his own. And it was at this moment that the brothers' true devotion was revealed. Renekton, despite the risk of being burned alive or torn to pieces by divine energy, picked up his brother in his arms. He was willing to sacrifice himself to save Nasus. When the light faded, the eyes of all Shurima witnessed not two dying mortals, but two divine warriors. Nasus was transformed into a majestic creature with the head of a jackal, the keeper of knowledge and destiny. Renekton became a massive crocodile warrior whose strength was now reinforced by divine power. Contrary to all expectations, Renekton did not die. The sun recognized him as worthy for his dedication and martial prowess. For centuries, these brothers were the pillars of the empire. Nasus commanded strategies and preserved the legacy of civilization, while Renekton was its sword, destroying any threat at the borders. Over time, other worthy warriors joined the ranks of the Ascended: Aatrox, Naafiri, and Zanin. The latter, in return, in addition to the title of Ascended, was also appointed Sun Priest, a person worthy of performing ascension rituals. He came to the candidates in the last days of their mortal lives, testified that they were worthy of ascension, and swore to guide them on their path to eternity. Among these people were Rast, Zelani, Varus, and Sitaka. However, disaster soon struck. As the army of the Ascended was suppressing the resistance of Icathia, an independent region that refused to submit to Shurima, the mages of Icathia, on the verge of defeat, desperately resorted to forbidden power. They awakened an ancient and terrible fear, the Void, which in an instant engulfed their homeland in eternal darkness and oblivion. The army of Shurima, led by the Ascended, managed to stop the onslaught of the otherworldly threats. But this victory came at a price. The minds of the Ascended themselves began to slowly crumble under the weight of their experiences. Sometime after this event, Shurima seemed poised for a new golden age under the rule of a young and ambitious emperor, Azir. But the seeds of his downfall were sown in his youth. in the dusty halls of Nasus's great library. It was there that the young prince, who initially had no chance of ascending to the throne, met a slave named Xerath. Their friendship was sincere but unequal. Azir promised Xerath that one day he would free him and make him his brother, and Xerath, in return, became the prince's shadow, his closest advisor and protector. However, the path to the throne was washed with blood. When assassins attacked the imperial family during their journey through the desert, only Azir and Xerath survived. The death of his older brothers made Azir the sole heir, but at the same time sowed a dark seed of greed for power and magic in Xerath's heart. For years, Azir strengthened the empire but kept his plans to free the slaves a closely guarded secret, fearing resistance from the nobility. Xerath, being unaware of his friend's intentions, saw only that the promise of freedom remained an empty one. He began to study forbidden sorcery, becoming more powerful and, at the same time, increasingly angry. Eventually, Xerath convinced Azir to take a bold step to perform the ascension ritual. This was a violation of all traditions, as this gift was only given for outstanding achievements at the end of life, not at the whim of a ruler. But Azir's pride knew no bounds. On the day of the ritual atop the temple beneath the blinding sun, Azir did what Xerath had given up hope of ever seeing. He declared the liberation of all Shurima's slaves and named Xerath his brother. But it was too late. Hatred and dark magic had already completely consumed Xerath. The moment the divine energy of the sun began to descend upon Azir, Xerath pushed him off the pedestal and took his place. The pure energy, not meant for a slave who had stolen its power, caused a catastrophe of unprecedented scale. An explosion occurred that literally wiped the capital of Shurima off the face of the earth, burying millions of lives under the sand. Renekton and Nasus were days away from the capital at the time, and when they finally arrived, only ruins remained of the beautiful city, and Azir himself was dead. Deprived of energy, the sun disk was falling apart. At the epicenter of the disaster, the brothers encountered the traitor Xerath, who had turned into a malevolent mass of dark energy. A battle ensued, but it proved impossible to destroy the former imperial mage. In the end, Renekton dragged Xerath into the tomb of the emperors located beneath the city and ordered Nasus to seal the exit. Knowing there was no other way, Nasus reluctantly carried out his brother's will. After the fall of Shurima, the location of the Ascended remained unknown for centuries. The only one known to have been active during this time was Nasus, who wandered the deserts for years, hoping to find a way to rescue Renekton from his imprisonment and seeking a means to counter Xerath. Meanwhile, underground, the battle between Xerath and Renekton continued. For centuries, they stalked each other in the deep darkness, while above their heads, the once great Shurima civilization crumbled to dust. All this time, Xerath poisoned Renekton's mind, whispering words filled with venom, and little by little, Renekton began to believe him. The traitor convinced Renekton that Nasus had deliberately sealed him away, envious of his success and unwilling to share the blessings of eternal life with anyone else. Eventually, Renekton's mind cracked. Centuries later, after the mighty Azir perished at the moment of his own ascension, Shurima fell. Although the warrior gods seemed immortal, they were still born of humans. Without the iron will of an emperor to guide them, many of those who survived the horrors of Icathia began to lose their purpose. Their old, petty human ambitions flared with renewed intensity, poisoned by the traumas of the past. They began to study the forbidden arts of sorcery, proclaiming themselves the only legitimate heirs to the world. The scattered mortal population, trembling under the yoke of their former protectors, gave these new tyrants a name, the Darkin. The word was a whispered curse, meaning the fallen in the ancient language. From then on, they were cursed 3 times over, first by the void, then by the collapse of their own glorious empire, and finally by the betrayal that doomed them to eternal torment. But even the Darkin could not escape the mental illness caused by their long struggle with the void. After centuries of fragile alliance, they inevitably turned against each other, and so began the Great War of the Darkin. This conflict spread from Shurima to Valorant and beyond. The renegade god warriors and the armies they created were unstoppable, and entire nations were crushed. It seemed that this would be the end of everything, until the mages of Runeterra unexpectedly discovered how to contain the remaining Darkin. Through secrecy and cunning, the physical forms of the Darkin could merge with the celestial power in their hearts, and all that power was channeled into the weapons they carried. Once their leaders were imprisoned forever within their own weapons, the rampaging hordes were broken and destroyed. These Darkin weapons were hidden away. Many examples were carefully guarded by the mortal civilizations that arose after the catastrophe, for it was clear that such power could be hidden but never destroyed. Over time, the great history of Shurima turned to dust and became myths that mothers used to scare their children with. But the thirst for power and ancient secrets has always attracted fortune seekers. When the Naxian noblewoman Cassiopeia Ducotau set out to find the tomb of the emperors, she hired the famous mercenary Severe, knowing that her unusual weapon, the Shalikar, was the true key to the tomb's door. Upon reaching the entrance, Cassiopeia betrayed Severe, striking her from behind to claim the treasures and power for herself. But as soon as she grabbed the weapon and opened the tomb, ancient traps were triggered, and a stone guardian came to life to punish the invaders. In this moment of chaos, after thousands of years of imprisonment, Xerath and Renekton finally broke free. Xerath disappeared into the desert, reveling in his magical power, while the insane Renekton set out in search of his brother, filled with a desire for fratricide. Severe, left for dead, bled out on the slabs of the ancient city, but she did not know that the blood of the last emperor flowed through her veins. When the drops of life touched the sand, the ancient magic of Shurima, dormant for centuries, responded. Azir's ashes began to gather together, bringing him back to life in the form of a phantom created from sand. The first thing the resurrected Azir saw was the mortally wounded young girl. He felt their blood connection and realized that it was her sacrifice, although involuntary, that had brought him back from oblivion. Lifting Severe in his arms, Azir carried her to a dry spring, what was once the oasis of the dawn. He begged the gods to let the healing power of the water save the last of his kind. And when Severe's wounds healed, a miracle happened. This act of selfless mercy and care for his people completed the true ascension ritual that had been interrupted a millennium ago. Azir was reborn as a majestic god emperor in golden armor. With his newfound power, he raised the ruined Shuriman capital from the sands. With the sun disk once again shining upon the city and the Ascended once again walking upon the sands, a new era dawned upon Shurima. The rebirth of Shurima reopened old wounds. Escaping from the tomb of the emperors, Renekton filled the desert with his ferocious roar. Blinded by madness and insanity, he seeks only revenge against his brother. The former hero has become a savage beast, rallying the most vicious marauders of the desert around him. Only occasionally does the noble warrior he once was shine through. While Renekton wreaks havoc, Nasus feels his strength returning. Xerath's release was a heavy blow to him, but the sight of the reborn Azir and the glow of the sun disk gave him something he hadn't felt in millennia: hope. While Azir restored the capital to its former glory, fate brought new and old heroes together in the city of Vikara. It was there, after a long journey, that Talia, the young stone weaver, returned in search of her family. She did not yet know that Vikara, once considered a ruin, had been transformed into a replica of the ancient capital, where hostile tribes walked side by side for the first time in centuries, united by their faith in the reborn Shurima. However, real danger was already breathing down the city's neck. Nasus, sensing the presence of Azir's blood, also arrived in Vikara. His goal was to find the Emperor's descendant before Xerath did. Nasus met Talia in the crowd and warned her, Shurima is now a dangerous place. He exposed the false Hierophant who was only pretending to be the heir and realized that the true descendant was somewhere nearby, but the enemy was already at the door. Xerath came to Vikara not as a liberator, but as a destroyer. He unleashed a rain of magical fire on the city, incinerating everything in his path. While Nasus tried to save the people, he met Talia again. True to her promise to protect the wounded woman she had found in the sands, the girl was ready to fight even a divine warrior. That woman turned out to be Severe, the true heir to the throne, who wielded Shalikar, the weapon of an ancient warrior queen of the Ascended host named Sitaka. Nasus begged them to flee, knowing that Xerath had come to finally exterminate Azir's bloodline. To give the ladies a chance, Nasus accepted the fight in the very center of the Kara. It was a battle of titans. Nasus, guardian of the sands, against Xerath, mage of pure energy. Xerath taunted Nasus, recounting how he had poisoned Renekton's mind for centuries in the tomb, convincing him that his brother had betrayed him. At the end of the battle, Xerath brought down the walls of the temple on Nasus, burying him under tons of rubble, hoping that this time he had gotten rid of his enemy for good. But Xerath underestimated the power of the new Shurima. Talia used her magic to create stone spheres that saved many residents from the collapse. Nasus survived and, climbing out of the ruins, came to an important conclusion. Azir's bloodline had survived, but now he knew that Renekton was free and seeking his blood. The fate of Shurima was once again tied in a tight knot, where the old heroes were forced to choose their path. But here it is impossible not to wonder, why did Azir, Nasus, Renekton, and Xerath remain ascended, while the others turned into Darkin? The ascended are people chosen by the Sun Disk for their merits. However, this process did not always go smoothly. Those who could not withstand the divine energy or failed the ritual became Bakai, deformed creatures. Xerath, on the other hand, was a unique case. He forcibly interrupted the ritual and absorbed so much power that it turned into pure magical energy. The real difference between the Ascended and the Darkin lies in two factors: time and choice. The former heroes of Shurima only became Darkin after the Empire fell and their minds were poisoned by the war with the Void. After that, they betrayed their ideals, enslaved humanity, and began to study forbidden blood magic to alter their own bodies. The reason Azir, Nasus, Renekton, and Xerath are not considered Darkin is simple. They did not participate in those bloody civil wars. Nasus lived in voluntary isolation, Renekton and Xerath were sealed in the tomb, and Azir was dead at the time. None of them touched the blood magic that forever changed characters such as Aatrox, Naafiri, Rost, and others. This kind of concludes our historical review of the Ascended. If you guys would like to learn the full story of the Darkin, there are several detailed videos on our channel. Be sure to watch them to get the complete picture of Shurima's fate. If you like this video, please support us with a like and a subscription. We would really appreciate that. See you guys soon for a mug of the finest ale in all of Runeterra.